Before I do start, I'll do my little disclaimer. I've given this lecture a lot of times. I'm not a cardiologist. Okay? All this stuff I have is pretty much self-taught, and most of these rules we talk about are rules that I came up with, and they do fit. So if while I'm talking, you guys think something differently, you've heard something different, read something, just tell me. When I first started with EKGs, I hated them because they were too complicated for me. So when I first started, just like anything else, I came up with a system. The system I use, if you like it or not, go ahead for it, is pretty much the stuff you have to document to build for an EKG, which is the rate, the rhythm, the axis, the interval, and the ST waves. If you go through each EKG for these areas and you find what's normal or abnormal, you can come up with a diagnosis like 100% of the time, if you don't know what the diagnosis is. So most of this stuff you can get from the actual numbers on the EKG. Because I never memorized numbers because it's a waste of my time. But I don't have the numbers for this one on these EKGs, so we can just work through that too. The other problem I had was I had no idea what a normal EKG was supposed to look like. And this is a normal EKG. I'll break it down how it works for me. Same thing as everything else, you can take it or leave it. So if you break it in half, right down the precordial leads, everything on the left side is supposed to be upright, with the exception of AVR right up there. So everything from the middle to the left, everything's upright. The P waves, the Q waves, the T waves, except for AVR. Everything to the right, starting at V1 and going through V6, starts as negative and then slowly works its way positive. That's the QRS. You can see up in V1 how the majority of the deflection is down. And you have a little up wave, a bigger up wave, taller one, and taller still. The P waves are always supposed to be upright. Sorry, the T waves are always supposed to be upright in all the precordial leads V1 through V6. You can keep this one like handy to refer to when you're going through the EKGs, because I always forget what was normal, and comparing it to what's supposed to be helps you out a lot. Okay, so this is all the details of an EKG. The P wave is where the atrium contracts, the QRS is where the ventricle contracts, the ST segment is where it repolarizes. There's supposed to be specific intervals or distance between each ones, and they're on the bottom. Okay, I never memorize those because I don't have a big brain, so I just look at what the computer tells me. QRS is supposed to be less than 120 milliseconds, so right there. Okay, that's always up in the top corner. The PR, the QTC, they're always up in the top left corner of the computer. That's the only part of the EKG that I trust the computer on. Okay, so what do you think about this EKG? If you were in charge, what would you do? You're in triage, you do this EKG, what do you do? The definition of a STEMI is ST elevation with reciprocal changes. Look at leads 1 in AVL. You see how the ST wave is down? So anytime you have elevation anywhere with reciprocal changes, doesn't matter what leads, it's always a STEMI. Always a STEMI. Okay? So you can't have a STEMI unless you have reciprocal changes. Now, when you say elevation and depression, what's that in relationship to, Lindsay? Like, how do you know what's up? How do you know what's down? Is it this line? Is it that line? Is it that line? Is it that line?
The last line?
It's from the end of the T wave to the beginning of the next P wave. So from the end of the T wave, beginning of the next P wave, so that's the baseline. And that comes in handy later because lots of times you can't tell which one's up, which one's down. So you can obviously see here the ST segment is above the baseline, and here it's below the baseline. That's the baseline there. You have reciprocal changes there and there. For me, when I look at EKGs, there's probably lots of abnormalities, but I only care about the ones that are relevant to the ER. So a prolonged P to the QRS, what's that called? Is that a certain type of block?
First degree.
First degree block. Do you care about a first degree block?
No.
I don't, because it doesn't do anything. Okay? So we covered the rate, it was fast. What's the rhythm? The rhythm, it's either sinus rhythm or it's not. Sinus is very simple, a P wave before every QRS, that's all it is. And this one has a P wave before every QRS. So it's sinus tachycardia. What's the axis? You guys know how to tell the axis of an EKG?
No.
It's
I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know what an axis.
So this EKG, all these spikes, all this is measuring vectors. Remember physics? That's how electricity flows through the arc. It's a vector. It has direction and magnitude. Okay? And I know that from spit booming. So to do the axis, you look at leads 1 and leads AVF and its thumbs. Lead 1 is your left thumb. Lead AVF is your right thumb. If both of the QRSs are up, 2 thumbs up, it's normal. Okay? That's not this one, right? 1 is up and AVF is down, so it's a left axis. My left thumb is up. Okay? Other way around, one is down, AVF is down, up, my right thumb is up, so it's the right axis. They're both down, double thumbs down, you can't tell what the axis is. So what do you think this axis is? Left, right, or can't tell?
Left.
Left, very good, okay. So we did the rate, rhythm, axis. What about the intervals here? We don't have the computer to tell us, but there's kind of a dirty way to tell if the intervals are relatively normal. What do you think about the intervals here?
They appear relatively long.
They do. First off the bat, they appear relatively normal. So the P wave before the QRS, that's not bigger than 3 boxes, which is normal. The QRS, it's not wide. It's not greater than 120 if we have the machine readings here. So that's normal. Now the QT interval. The numbers differ depending on your age and your sex. But there's a simple way to tell whether it's long or not. The T wave should not fall in between the distance between each QRS spike. So we have a spike here, right there's the midpoint. The T wave lines up on the midpoint of those two things. You can see it here as well. One QRS, midpoint, T wave's on the QRS. So this is a prolonged QT. Now, let's say you have a patient with this EKG, the attending says, oh, it's all normal, and they're puking their guts out. And the attending, Joe Perkins, says, let's give them 8 milligrams of Zofran. What do you think about that? What's that?
Makes it worse.
Yes, you'd be surprised at how much stuff we use in emergency that prolongs QT. Diflucan does it, Zofran does it, Zithromax does it. We probably use those multiple times on a daily basis. So this case is based on a case I had in residency. Gave the patient Zofran, and this happens. This is when your QT is so long that the QRS and T wave, hit at the same time, and you go into this VTAC. It's called torsades de poids, which is French for twisting around a point. If you look at all of these, it's almost like a DNA helix, like it's twisting, right? So that's torsades. How do you treat this? How much, Mac? 2 grams. 2 grams, or as much as it takes for the heart to mobilize. All right, what do you think about this one? Let's go through it by the system. What's the rate? Think the rate is fast or slow? Yeah, it's normal. Rate's normal. What about the rhythm? Sinus or not?
Yes.
Yes, there's a P wave before every QRS in all of the leads. Okay. Axis. What's the axis?
Left.
Yes, left axis. What about the intervals?
I would say you could say that's a prolonged QT by what you said.
Yes, you are correct. What else is off? What other intervals are off? Yes, 1 QRS. Okay. So remember, QRS above 120 is a specific type of block. It's a bonal branch block. Okay. And I used to get all the types of blocks mixed up. Okay. Don't mix up bonal branch block with first, second, third degree AV block. It's two separate things. A bonal branch block is when electricity flows through the ventricle at an abnormal rate or direction, because you're born with it, because something metabolic is going on. So we have 2 types of bonal branch blocks, right? Right or left? Which one is this, right or left? So the official definition of left versus right is a complex mathematical equation. There's like 3 or 4 things you have to put in there. It's very complicated. I can't remember it. Here are my rules for left versus right bonal branch block. To have a bonal branch block, you need 2 things. 1, a QRS greater than 120. So it's automatically a left or a right. If you see QRS greater than 120, go right to lead V1. If the QRS is down, it's a left axis. If the QRS is up, it's a right axis. That fits for all the definitions of different type of bonal branch blocks. So this one, QRS greater than 120, the the QRS is down in V1, so it's a left bonal branch block. Can you tell if someone's having a heart attack with a left bonal branch block? Heart Association, the American Cardiology, whatever, come up with recommendations every year. 2015, the recommendation changed. A new left bundle is only supposed to be treated like a heart attack if they're unstable. Science shows that people with a new left bundle are unstable, an emergent cath or elective cath within 48 hours, there's no benefit between the two. So you're only supposed to take an emergency cath if it's unstable. Now those are recommendations, okay? How often do you think, when I call the cardiologist on the phone, he follows the recommendations? Yeah, I'm gonna say like 2% of the time. Okay. So you also have to keep in mind who you're talking to when you're explaining the EKG. So we go back to the original question. So it's a new left bundle. They're stable. Can you tell if they're having an active heart attack or not? Yes, you can. It's called Sarbosa's criteria. Okay. Now, with a left bundle branch block, we already know it's an abnormality with how electricity flows through the ventricle, right? Because the QRS is when the ventricle beats and it's supposed to be narrow. This is wide. Remember vectors, all right? The Q wave, the axis of all this is how the electricity is flowing. If you change which way the electricity is flowing through the ventricle, you change which way the electricity goes through the T wave. So there's supposed to be what's called discordance when there's a left bundle. Now, let's review real quick. What's the isoelectric point of an EKG?
After the T wave.
T to P.
Before the T.
So this is the isoelectric point right here, end of the T to the P. If we map it out, there's an ST elevation, right? There's like 3 millimeters of ST elevation. That's called discordance. Due to the laws of physics and the way the heart's made, the left bundle, the T wave, is supposed to be in the opposite direction of the QRS, but it's supposed to be less than 5 millimeters. If it's greater than 5 millimeters, it's called inappropriate discordance. There's also a bunch of other fancy rules for Sarbosa's criteria. That's one of them. For me, that covers everything. The second one is called concordance. So discordance is when the T wave's in the opposite direction of the QRS. Concordance is when they're in the same direction. Concordance for left bundle is always systemic. Those two things are always systemic. So this one, if you look at it, so we just went over those rules. Who thinks this is a STEMI? Who thinks it's not a STEMI? For this lead right here, the major deflection QRS is down, correct? This right here is the ST segment. This right here is the isoelectric point. The ST segment is below the isoelectric point. It's 1 millimeter, it's close. This is concordance in all three leads, and this is a STEMI. You can see how it's easy to miss these bundle branch blocks. Does everyone see that? This one is a discordance, right? This is the isoelectric point. If you follow it out, it's supposed to be in the opposite direction of the QRS, which it is, but it's supposed to be less than 5 millimeters. This is concordance. QRS is up, the ST segment is up right there. You can see the arrow line, and the baseline is right here. So forget about this guy. These two cover all types of STEMIs with the left bundle.
All right, so I think it's a normal rate.
Okay.
I think it's a sinus rhythm.
Okay.
There's a little bit of interval changes there.
Okay. Which intervals?
The QRS looks different.
Oh, do you think it's greater than 120?
I don't know unless you got some calendar.
Well, it is greater than 120. Okay. So this is a left or right bundle. What do you think it is, a left or right?
It does not look the same as the left that we just looked at.
Yeah. So we have the one thing greater than 120. So now we go to V1. Is the QRS mainly up or down in V1? So it's a right bundle. Now we talked about what to do for a new onset left bundle if you're unstable. What's most often associated with a new onset of a right bundle branch block? Anybody know?
Is it anything pulmonary?
Ooh, why? Why do you say pulmonary?
Right side, right heart.
Yes, very good.
Lung.
Think about one of the main things we see in the ER which can kill you that infects both the heart and the lungs.
Endocarditis.
PE. PE.
Oh, PE.
New onset right bundle is most often associated with a pulmonary embolism. And you just told me why, because it affects the right side of the heart. You can also see, this is very suggestive of a PE. Again, this is more you might want to know. If you look at the P waves in 2,3-AVF and V1 and V2. Now before, when I had the first EKG that was normal, I didn't go over which leads correspond with which part of the heart. For this one, all we need to know is 2,3-AVF is the right side of the heart. So let's just look at these three leads, 2,3-AVF. And let's just look at the P waves. Okay, no, just the P waves. Look at the P waves here, P waves here, P waves here, and compare them to the P waves in another lead, like the one right above it. See that P wave there?
It's not as pronounced.
So, would you say the P waves in 2,3-AVF are large, correct?
Yeah.
So we already said 2,3-AVF is the right side of the heart. When the P wave is on the paper, what part of the heart is contracting? Atrium. So we have stress, we have right access, we have a new right bundle branch block. We have enlargement of the right atrium, 2,3-AVF. Right atrium feeds directly into the lungs. So this is another subtle sign that there's a pulmonary embolism.
It has to contract harder? Or
Yeah, because it's like with the PE, you have a block in the system. It's like you're blocking off whatever percentage of the flow to the heart. So by physics, there's more pressure, there's less flow. So the heart enlarges. Now I'll tell you what, I've seen this missed the vast majority of the time by most of our attendings.
I think it's slow.
Okay? I'd say this is normal because when you're doing the access and when you're doing the bone branch blocks, it's the majority of the QRS. Is it up or is it down? And it's subtle here, but it's very small, but it is above the isoelectric point here. So we have up there, so the access is actually normal.
Okay. Peak T waves.
Ooh, where?
V3. Then they're reversed in V2.
Okay. What else?
V5 and V6. V4 through V6.
Okay.
With, I think, looks like some ST elevation.
Where?
I see it in 5 and 6.
Okay.
Probably some 4.
How much elevation do you have to have in core leads to be a stemming? You guys know? At more than 2 millimeters. And each small box is a millimeter. So you're right, it's a good call actually. There's like a 0.5 to 1 millimeter elevation here, which doesn't qualify as a stemming, but very good eye. So keep going. I'll just help you out. The intervals in this one are relatively normal.
Okay.
What do you think if I was like, hey, I think the V2 and V3 look jacked up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, again, you can come up with a diagnosis if you just describe how it's different than normal. Okay, so if you look at the normal EKG only in V2 and V3, and look at this one, again, you don't have to know anything about medicine. You have to describe me how they're different. How would you describe that they're different? It's a STEMI, you're right. All right, now I'll show you the next slide. Keep looking at V2 and V3. And imagine, if you will, if we took the EKG and just flipped it upside down.
This is one of those flippy doo-doos.
Yeah, now it's flipped upside down. What's that? And what's that?
It's a fireman's hat.
That's ST elevation. So this is a posterior MI. ST depression in V2 and V3 is a posterior MI until proven otherwise. And I've seen this missed at least 6 times in the past year by our attendings. If you look very closely at the first one, there's also the beginnings of elevation in 2-3 AVF. Now, I'm currently doing a research project to confirm this, but you can forget this if you want to. But if you look at this T wave here, see how there's a P, QRS, and a relatively slow climb up of the T wave? Look at, especially this one, P, QRS, see how it just boom, like shoots up? That's one of the first changes with an infarct. So if you repeat this in like 5-10 minutes, you see the elevation in 2-3 AVF. And that's why this is slow. Okay, this is a posterior right-sided infarct. The right side of the heart is where the SA node is and where the electrical signal to keep your rate up begins with. So you're infarcting that side of the heart, and that's why it's slow. And often with these types of infarcts, you can also have a complete block too, because you're affecting the SA node.
It is regular.
Okay.
Very wide QRS and very T waves, and looks like a bundle branch block.
What kind? Left or right?
Hold please. Let me refer to my notes. It is a right,
Why is it a right?
because V1 is up.
Is V1 up or is V1 down? And remember,
Oh, it's down. It's
Yeah.
down. Sorry, so it's
Oh, wait.
left.
left
It's
bundle.
left.
Okay? So now we have a left bundle branch block. Do you see anything off with the ST waves that could be bad? V2 and V3, just show me where the isoelectric point is.
Right here.
Yes, that's the isoelectric point. Okay. What's all this? That's the ST segment. Do you say that's greater than 5 millimeters in the opposite direction of QRS?
Awesome.
So this is a STEMI. This is a STEMI in a left bundle branch block.
I think the rate is pretty normal.
Okay.
Definitely got some elevation.
Elevation where?
B3.
Okay.
B2.
You're pulling out the elevation properly. Is there reciprocal change? Is this a STEMI based on elevation and reciprocal change?
No.
The T's are wide.
Which T's?
V3.
B4, right? A little bit B5, right?
Yeah.
Now, you just look at this whole thing as a whole. Look at all the T waves everywhere else. See how high it is in relationship with QRS? See that? See over here? See how these ones are massive, they're huge. Right? You'd almost say they're peaked, correct? The peaked T wave is the very first EKG change when there's an infarction. If someone infarcts and comes in 5 minutes later, this is the first thing that's there. So this is a very early infarction. And you wouldn't know it unless you repeat the EKG because it's too early for the cardiac enzymes to be abnormal. One of the things we don't do enough, in my opinion, is serial EKGs. This one was actually a guy who had a flower whose dad died of a heart attack, and he was carrying the casket. He had chest pain. He came right to the hospital. And I was like, did they have a 2-for-1 special there by chance? Because you're about to join your dad.
Wow, I hope you didn't start with that.
AFib? Okay. Why do you say it's AFib?
I don't see the P wave.
P wave? Look at these V2 and V3. What's
Okay.
the time? Yeah, that's P wave. There you go. So try the system. Rate. You say rate's normal or abnormal? Why? Yeah, it's a little slow. You're right. Okay. Rhythm. Sinus or not? No?
No, yes.
Access is normal. Okay. Intervals relatively normal. What do you think about the ST waves? Do any of these ST waves look abnormal? If so, which ones?
B2, B3.
B2 and B3. Now again, just using regular language, if you're talking to me on the phone and say, hey, they look abnormal, like, what do you mean? How would you describe those to me as being abnormal with the regular T waves? If I said, is there an equal upward and downward deflection? So that's pretty correct, right? You can see there's an upward and a downward face of the T wave right here. See, all these other T waves only have one way up. This one, up and down. It's biphasic. Okay? A biphasic T wave in B2 and B3. Does everybody know what that is? Well, let's go back to the reason. So this is your EKG and triage. What do you think? What's that? No. This is called a Wellens wave. A biphasic T wave in B2 and B3 is the first sign of a proximal LED occlusion. This is the number 2 misfinding I see all the time by our attendings. And multiple times I have this and I call the cardiologist and says, what are you talking about? Most often what happens is they say, all right, I'm not going to cath them. Truck comes back positive later. They cath them like 12 hours later and they always have a proximal LED. I had a 27-year-old at Lima with this last week. He had a stent in his LED. That's a Wellens wave. Don't forget it. Biphasic, B2 and B3.
Pace.
Pace. How do you know it's pace?
The marks.
Very good.
A and B.
Why are there 2 pacer spikes before every QRS? Did everyone see that?
Is it atrioventricular phase?
What's that?
Is it like a biphasic pacer?
What do you mean by pacing?
You can have atrial or ventricular.
Yeah.
Like you can't.
So there's a spike there. All pacers nowadays are called AV dual sequential pacers. The lead goes in the atrium, the lead goes in the ventricle. The atrium one fires first. If the heart doesn't pick up, then the one in the ventricle fires next. If you look at this kind of has the appearance of a left bundle branch block, right? Because the QRS is wide. Now it's not classic like the left bundles because the QRS is not up and or down, in V1. But think about it. Think about the electricity going through the ventricle. The left bundle branch block, that's what we had. We had abnormal electrical signal through the ventricle. And we could tell if there was an infarct with that, right? What do you think about this one? You're in triage, you do this, what do you think? You can apply the Sarbosa's criteria to a ventricular pace rhythm. If you look at this one, especially leads 2, 3 AVF, V3, V4, and V5, the ST segment is in the opposite direction of QRS, which is supposed to happen in a pace rhythm, but it's more than 5 millimeters. It's more than 5 millimeters, more than 5 millimeters. This is a STEMI and a pacer. So the Sarbosa's criteria can also be applied to pace rhythms. Now there's 2 main abnormalities on here. One's pretty obvious, the other one's pretty simple.
The rate is bradycardic
Why is it bradycardic?
because there's like 5 beats.
Why is that 5 beats?
Right.
Well, if it's inferior.
Yeah, it's an MI, right? We have massive elevation all over the place, but we have this massive reciprocal changes. See here, V3, V2, AVL, means 1. So this is the right side. 2, 3 AVF is where the ST elevation is. So this is a right-sided infarct, and we have a complete block now. If you look, here are the P waves. P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave, P wave. There's 0 connection between the atrium and the ventricle in this one. And that's because the right side of the heart is being infarcted. That's why right-sided infarcts, we say be careful with nitro. Because now you can get into a complete block, and also the right side of the heart is affected, and if you give them a bunch of nitro, you drop their preload, and their pressure zeroes out, and they die.
I'd say that it's slow.
Okay?
It has P waves, so it's sinus.
Okay? Give you a hint. Just look at the whole thing from a distance. If I had to ask you what one thing during looks abnormal, if you look at it, the whole thing together, what would you say?
T waves.
The T waves. Again, you're right. All the T waves are abnormal here. Again, if you're just talking in plain language, how would you describe them as abnormal?
They're peaked.
Peaked. So what is this? Diffuse peak T waves is
Low.
hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia. Now, this is one of the most important things about T waves. Peak T waves. Let me ask you a question. What's the definition of a peak T wave? How do you define a peak T wave?
It's pointy.
What's that?
It's tall and pointy.
You're exactly right. There's no definition for a peak T wave. If you think it looks tall and pony, it's tall and pony. You're exactly right. In general,
Good answer.
what I tell people is, if you look at it, it's more tall than it is narrow, and it's relatively large compared to QRS. See how these are almost right here, the same amplitude. That's totally not normal. And it's tall. It's not like horribly tall, but it's taller than it is wide. So that's what a peak T wave is.
So it has to be peaked throughout, and where the other one was
Yes.
just
Now,
peaked in 2 and 3.
peak throughout a global thing. That's hyperkalemia. Localized peak T waves. That's an infarct because when you infarct the muscle, the sodium potassium channels can't keep the differential between both sides of the heart muscle, and that's abnormal. This is the more classic peak T wave with hyperkalemia. This one's fairly obvious, but it's the same thing. The T waves are taller than they're wide, and they're large compared to the QRS.
It's tachycardic.
Okay.
It's irregular.
Okay.
Just I'm looking at the lead 2 there, so I see that one irregular spot. Now I see. I'm a little confused about the P wave and the T wave correlation.
Yes, you are very good. Now, remember, let's just go back to our rules now. Okay. So it is fast, but it is sinus because you see a P before every QRS. Even though maybe a little variation is P before QRS. Now, right here is the T wave, and right there is the P wave. So right there is the isoelectric point. So from there to there, that line is the isoelectric point. We do it over here. That's the end of the T wave. That's the P wave. It's very small, but that's where the isoelectric point is. Okay. So you're saying infarct?
Yeah.
Okay, you're right, but this is another point I always tell the residents. You don't treat an EKG, you treat a person. Okay? It doesn't matter what the EKG shows. If the person's history doesn't match, you got to take that into account. Now, there's several abnormalities here. Technically, this is sinus tachycardia and a complete right bundle branch block. It's tricky, but if you look very closely, the QRS is definitely wider than 120 through here. It's up in V1, so this is a right bundle branch block. There's multiple other abnormalities here. There's a large downward deflection in lead 1 with a little bit of a Q wave in lead 3 with an inverted T wave, as well as inverted T waves in V2 and V3. Those two abnormalities are one of the textbook definitions of a pulmonary embolism, as well as a new right-sided pulmonary branch block. There's other abnormalities here, though. Let me ask you, what do you think about AVR in this EKG?
It's definitely a little bit wrong.
Why is it not normal?
Off of the QRS, that elevation right there.
There you go. There's elevation AVR. Do we care about that? Now here's the thing. This is new science for the past couple
Aren't they
years.
all important?
No. So here's the thing. If you go to medical school, you go to anywhere, they say forget about AVR. It's worthless. They tell you to throw it out. This is just in the past 5 to 7 years. ST elevation in AVR with any reciprocal change, which there is all over the place, is either a proximal AD or all 3 vessel occlusion. This is a very ugly EKG. This person's going to die. I'm just going to cath that right away.
And you said they were just skipping it.
Yeah,
Back
just
in the day,
skipping it.
whatever, walk it off.
Yeah. Elevation with AVR with any reciprocal change is a STEMI. So don't ever forget about AVR. AVR is very valuable.
So that patient's having a problem with PE.
Yeah.
And
No, this
the big one.
This person had all 3 vessels and they had to go to cabbage emergently. So ST elevation AVR with any reciprocal change, you should be shitting your pants. All right, who wants this one?
Oh shit!
I'll tell you what. Why don't you do this one again? We can know this one.
Tachycardic.
Yep.
It is sinus.
Yep.
QRS. Well, the AVR could be thrown at us again
There you go.
because of that downward slope.
There you go. So this is, you treat the EKG, not the person. This person could have a bunch of different stories, but this person was 55, a fat white guy with diabetes and smokes 2 packs a day. This person is an 18-year-old kid who had a nonstop seizure in, Home Depot, and comes in eating flour and he's still seizing. No history of a seizure. You identify the abnormality, AVR. Elevation with a tall R wave in AVR. If you also notice about this one, well, let me ask you, what's the access for this one? It's tricky, but it's close.
I'd say I see 2 thumbs up.
Okay, it's very close. This is up. If you look very closely, it's like 1 millimeter more down than it is up, so this is a right access. Okay? That's one of the things I think you should always freak out about in the emergency if you see a right access. It's always associated with something bad. Every time I see it, I either have to explain why it's not bad or that it's old. So a right access with a tall R wave in AVR, nonstop seizures, is, let me know, overdose. TCA overdose. TCA overdose. TCAs, lots of antipsychotics, antidepressants. This EKG change happens. You get sinus tachycardia, rightward access, very tall R wave in AVR. If you look closely, the QT is prolonged. Okay, so how do you treat this? What's the antidote? Bicarb. How much bicarb?
Until it resolves.
As much as until the EKG gets back to normal. When I was at V's, we had a case like this, and we took every amp of bicarb in the hospital. We had to get some curry over from St. Charles Emergent. He had like 150 amps of bicarb. The guy walked out at the hospital. So remember, we don't always treat the EKG, we treat the person.
Normal rate.
Okay.
Sinus rhythm.
Okay.
The access is 1 up, 1 up. So I'm gonna say left.
Access is normal. Okay. So for the access, it's the majority of the QRS. Okay, so
Majority of it.
yeah, so there's 3 main parts. I should probably do this one at the beginning. There's 3 main parts for the EKG: the P wave, QRS wave, and the T wave.
Okay.
When I mean up, I mean the QRS. So that's the majority up. Same thing there. Majority up. There's a little bit down, but it's majority up, so it's 2 thumbs up, so it's normal.
Oh, left. YT.
Ooh, there.
V2, 3.
Okay.
4, 5.
Okay.
A little bit in 6.
So what do you think?
And then it's taller than the Q wave.
Yes. So this is?
You're fucked. No.
Yes. Right. This is approximately the occlusion. Now, this is something else that came out just last year. It was just discovered last year. The official name for it is the Winter's T wave. It's this ST depression with a very hyperacute T wave. That's approximately the occlusion. But we already knew about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We already picked this up because we knew there was focal peak T waves compared to everything else.
Right.
So see, this is like pointing out the Winter's T waves or the hyperacute T waves.
Sinus.
Yep.
Looks regular.
Okay.
No worry.
Okay.
Is there a little bit of ST elevation?
Where?
Can you even call it NE1 even a little bit?
Yes. Where else?
2, 3, 4, 5,
Okay.
6.
All over the place. So what do you want to do? You're in triage using EKG. What do you want to do?
I want to get them actually wrong.
Why?
Because I'm on down triage.
Do you think they're having a heart attack?
I don't see
any reciprocal changes. That's what I was just gonna say.
There is one, but it's the one time we don't pay attention to reciprocal change, and that's it's an AVR. You look very closely. There's like 1 million. Okay, but for this is pericarditis. ST elevation all over the place. Throw out AVR. Okay, no reciprocal changes, so it's not a heart attack. There's other subtle findings that are associated with pericarditis, which is PR elevation in AVR with diffuse PR depression all over the place. So this is a very subtle pericarditis. This is the more classic pericarditis. You can see how they pointed out this ST elevation all over the place. Here elevation AVR, so that's pericarditis. So there's